Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So if you're new here, my name's Ray and I just finished my second year studying physics here at Cambridge. And in this video, I'm going to be going over some of my life story and some of the lessons I learned along the way in getting to Cambridge. Because I briefly touched upon it in a earlier video, and then I just said, like, if you guys want to see a new video or a separate video about this, then do let me know, and quite a few people wanted to, so I figured I'd make it. So there are two purposes for this video. One is mostly an altruistic reason, and one is like a tiny selfish reason. So the altruistic reason is that I hope that even if this video encourages or inspires one other person to apply who otherwise wouldn't have, or encourages someone, say in secondary school or sixth form, who wasn't seriously thinking about applying to Cambridge or Oxford, to like work harder and smarter and potentially make a good application there. Even if it inspires like at least one person to do that who then makes it, that's like huge, a huge benefit for like them. And probably a tiny bit for me as well, because I get a bit of satisfaction out of that as well, and hearing like stories of people who go on to do well. The tiny selfish reason is that I want to get better at making videos without scripting them, because a lot of my earlier videos were scripted. So right now I just have a few bullet points written on my iPad, and hopefully that should be like enough for making videos and stuff. So I guess the most natural way to start this life journey video is probably with when I was born, and that was in September 2000. And I was actually born in Pakistan, but I don't have any memories of that because in about mid-2003 my family were fortunate enough to come to UK. And when we came to UK, we stayed in London for a little while, for a few weeks, and stayed in Birmingham for a few months, and then we finally like moved northwards, upwards to in and around Manchester, and we basically stayed there since. When we were moving around, that was mainly because my dad was trying to find work at like different places and wherever he could find it, because we didn't have like a job lined up or whatever coming here. And then in Manchester, we stayed, I remember that's where basically most of my memories are. So we stayed in a council house in Manchester until about 2008. And that's where I went to nursery, reception, year 1 and year 2. And these are probably some of my earliest memories. And I don't have many interesting stories to share, except that probably my dad did leave a few times to go to like a Germany or to go back to Pakistan to find work and also earn a bit more money there. And I remember one particular case in my life where my dad had gone back to Pakistan for a few weeks, and he gave some money to like my mum to like feed us or whatever during that time, and like do grocery shopping and stuff like that. And then like when we were shopping, I don't know if the money was stolen or she somehow lost the money or something. After that, we basically didn't have any money for the remainder of this few weeks when my dad was gone. And we basically had to only eat like dal and roti. If you know of dal, it's like a sort of lentil sort of soupish thing in South Asia. And we basically only had to eat that for a few weeks while we were sort of waiting, because we just literally didn't have any other money. And despite that, I think my parents kind of had a humbling approach when it came to money. Or, well, I mean, I remember another example where, like my sister's mum and I were going shopping, Eid shopping. And when it came, for my mum to pay for some of the clothes that we were shopping for that day, like the money in her purse was just not there anymore. So she was like pretty sure, like, well, it was stolen. And then like when we just sort of came home, like my mum ended up telling my dad, and then my dad was like, well, it doesn't matter, like you didn't really need the clothes anyway, and there's probably someone else whoever stole the money probably needed it much more, or like they were actually hungry. And yeah, so I guess even though growing up we didn't have a lot, my parents were still appreciative of how much we still had and how much we could still actually afford to eat and stuff like that, even if some weeks it was just dal or whatever. So anyways, in about 2008 we moved to a new house, which we've basically been renting since, and it's the one we still stay at. So I attended a local primary school between like year 3 and year 6 over there, and I don't have many memories there. I mean, it was really nothing special. Although during that time, my dad ended up buying me a laptop, which was really good because like he saved up quite a lot of money to buy like my sister and I laptops. And for me personally, during that period in primary school, Like basically every day when I got back from school, I would go on a game called Roblox, and I would be building my own games on Roblox, using the like Roblox programming language Lua. And I think that was immensely valuable, like for me growing up, because it massively improved my like mathematical abilities. Because when you sort of, when you're growing up and you see things around you, or well, you see things on Roblox and you're like, oh, well, how did such and such make this thing? And then you sort of have to like work through a puzzle and trying to make it yourself. And you learn so much along the way. And despite not being me being like perfectly fluent in Lua or something, like I still had a lot of fun growing up making these things on Roblox and just generally improving my like, I don't know, 3D modeling, problem solving skills, stuff like that. And I didn't even realize I was doing that because I was having so much fun during that process as well. And I think this was vastly better than like many of my friends who were playing like PS4 game. Well, I mean, I think it was like PS3 at the time. Well, just like Assassin's Creed or Black Ops or whatever. Like me playing Roblox and like trying to build my own stuff and like learning these programming languages between like the year 3 and year 6, that was immensely valuable in terms of like improving my problem solving skills and getting me like well set up, like I don't know, mathematically, and like improving my reasoning. And I think if I didn't have that laptop growing up and my dad did not buy it me, then I may well be in a very different position to how I am now. Just because of like how valuable that was. So that's basically it until like the end of primary school. There wasn't a whole lot over there. But there are like two important lessons which I take away from this, which is that the country you grow up in dictates like 95% of the opportunities you have available in your life. And I don't want the message of this video to be sort of taken wrong. I'm like incredibly appreciative of like, despite not having like the best opportunities growing up, or well, having to go through periods where my family just struggled financially and to even probably afford like any good food. Yeah, during those periods, I mean, we were still better off than like 95% of other people globally, just because of the opportunities we had, or like the welfare from the government as well. That was like immensely valuable, and like child tax credit and like all these sort of benefits that my parents had, which meant that they could still have money to feed us. Whereas in many other countries, like these things literally just don't exist. So I am still incredibly appreciative of just being in this country, because I know like almost all my life opportunities have come from that. And I think it's something like many other people, yeah, just forget to appreciate, like how much the country you're born or raised in dictates like how your life basically like comes out. And I think it's especially important when it comes to education, because growing up, my parents always reminded me how fortunate I was enough to have like a good education in like a developed country, and how like many of my like cousins back home would really want to have like the same level of educational opportunities or whatever, and that I should actually make the most of it. And I think that's probably the most important thing I would have taken away from my childhood, that I'm glad I made the most of the opportunities I had growing up, and like actually tried hard in school growing up, just because my parents constantly reminded me about how fortunate I was to be in this like situation, or well, to just be in this country. And there are like literally millions of people globally who just don't have an education whatsoever, and particularly girls in like developing countries, because like of sort of expectations of society in those countries and stuff like that. And when just reminded of that fact, I try to remember that I should be making the most of every opportunity that comes along, and not just for opportunities that come along, like even go out and make opportunities for yourself, which is something I'll probably cover more in a later video. So like rather than sitting down and waiting for something good to happen, or like some opportunity to come along which you can grab or something, like just making opportunities for yourself, which I'll talk more about at length in like some future video or something. And the second lesson I would probably take away is that perhaps the most useful thing you can do growing up, and there's no like age at which you have to start, so like you can start as early as you want, is that to learn to program, or well, learn to build things, because it unlocks like a new side of your brain almost, in that you look at something and you're like, well, how can I make this for myself? And you sort of have to reason through that, and it improves your like problem solving skills, analytical abilities, even programming. It improves your like mathematical abilities. And like when I was building games on Roblox, like my 3D like visual skills were like incredible, just because I like was really good at doing that. And like I learned about like vectors and stuff in like year 3, year 4, because when you had to translate objects around and stuff like that, because like programming, and especially on a website like Roblox, it just opens up so many opportunities for growth. Like when you're growing up, well, it improves your like mathematical analytical skills so well, and you don't even realize you're doing it because you're having a lot of fun doing it as well. So I would highly encourage, if you like have any younger siblings, to introduce them to this, and if they have a whole lot of fun doing it, then it'll pay off massively in the long run. And even growing up, my parents didn't quite realize this until I later mentioned it a few years, like, wow, this is actually the reason. Like, if I did not have that computer, or I had not discovered Roblox during that time, I don't imagine my skills would have been as good as they are now. So after primary school, I went to what at the time was an underperforming secondary school. I think now it's like pretty average or something. But I don't have a lot of interesting stories to tell during that time. Like my family still sort of struggled a bit financially during that time, but it was getting better. Or like we were becoming a bit more financially stable with a few more savings and stuff like that. But I do remember some particular stories which I think would probably be useful. And one was that I remember in year 7, like a few weeks into secondary school, I just sort of said to like a few of my friends, and I think even a teacher, that like, oh hey, like miss, I want to like go to Oxford someday or something. And I said this to some of my friends, and they like just sort of laughed it off as well. And they were like as if like you go to this school, like this underperforming school, you don't go to any fancy private school or something, like what are your chances of getting in? Your family background isn't like not even that good. What are your chances of getting in there? And these like snarky replies would just be very, I don't know, discouraging. But fortunately in year 7, I was like stupid enough or smart enough to like not pay attention to this, or just not really care too much about what other people were saying or thinking. So then during most of secondary school, I kind of coasted along. I did put more effort into maths and science just because those were way more fun than all the other subjects. And I kind of like coasted along in the rest of my subjects. And because I was putting more effort into maths and science, I did improve a lot more in those subjects. And yeah, like next thing I knew, like in year 10, year 11, I was like getting the highest scores because of that. But one case or one story I like to tell is that when I was in year 7, there was one of my friends, he was basically like everyone said he was like the smartest kid in the year or whatever. And like he did score the best in like all the tests. But then over the years during secondary school, he just kind of became complacent and just ended up with fairly average GCSE results. And everyone thought that he would end up with the highest GCSE results from like year 7, year 8. But I think he sort of let that get to his head of all these people praising him constantly. And it just made him grow complacent. And then other people caught up to him and even surpassed him. And well, like, yeah, half a dozen, well, yeah, many other people caught up to him. And I think this is one of the lessons, like, when you're praising someone, well, just don't. I personally would not praise my friends for like doing well. I mean, I'd probably say like well done, but like going over the top is just not fun, or well, not useful for them, especially if they let it get to their heads. Or like even my younger brother or my younger sister, I don't praise them. I just said like, rather than saying, "Oh, you're so smart" or whatever, it's much better to say, "Oh wow, look what you can achieve putting in all these hours or putting in all this extra work," because you're praising the process instead of like their supposed natural abilities. But I think that's a story I like to remind myself of, that to never grow complacent, because you will fall behind other people who may be average at that moment, but will like surpass you. If it's sort of like a marathon or well a race. Like if people are like cheering you on and you're like in the lead, then you might feel like, oh, well, yeah, I can sort of take a rest now. But like other people are still running. And if you want to stay ahead, then you gotta like still be running. Or if you want to catch up to someone who's already ahead, you will have to run faster than them. And that would involve like doing a bit more work than them. So anyway, I did carry on making games on Roblox during that time, and I was making a few websites on the side, like just, I don't know, I made like a Flash gaming website in like a year 7 or year 8 or something, and that was a whole lot of fun to work on outside of school. And I think that process sort of continued to like improve my ability of like breaking down these like large projects in small manageable chunks, being like, oh hey, I want to build a Flash gaming website, and then just figuring out how to do it and learning everything along the way. But I ended up doing less and less of that through like year 8, 9, 10, because I ended up playing like way too much. There's a game called Dota. It's kind of like a League of Legends, and I ended up clocking like 700, 800 hours on Dota. And that was just not useful whatsoever. Like, they're all like games which are fun and useful, kind of like building stuff in Roblox. But like games like Dota, they're just useless. But they're designed to be so addictive that you just don't end up realizing. And I played tons of Dota, and I just didn't realize like how much time I was generally wasting on it. And had I spent that time, like, let's say, working on some more interesting projects on Roblox, or like thinking about ways to actually improve my maths problem solving abilities by, I don't know, working through some like interesting books, like the art of problem solving for that matter. Had I done more of that, I think I would have been in a much better situation, or I would have enjoyed maths so much more. But yeah, so for the rest of secondary school, I kind of just coasted along. I carried on improving my problem solving skills a bit, and I did like Khan Academy on the side, which helps me to improve my maths skills, and I ended up becoming the best at maths in basically my year group. And yeah, that was, yeah, pretty good. I wish I pushed myself more during that time, and I had only realized that when I got to sixth form, that I wish I pushed myself so much more during maths, because I remember in about year 10 and year 11 maths, because I had covered all of maths on Khan Academy before, I was just sat in the class, just literally not doing anything. Well, I was doing the work, but I'd finish it like in 10 minutes or so, and I just spend the rest of the lesson chatting. And I wish during that time I had pushed myself a bit further, or did some extra work, or like did some, let's say, UKMT questions to improve my problem solving skills, or that my teacher had encouraged me to do that, but like neither of the two happened. But that leads on to a separate lesson. But yeah, so it got to around a few months before my exams in year 11, and I realized that I wasn't as prepared, or I didn't know a lot of the content, or well, I learned the content in class, but I just couldn't remember it. So I was trying to find ways in which I could remember the content. So I tried like physical flashcards, and like physical flashcards suck. Like, can I just do flashcards on my phone? And that's when I found Anki. So I remember there were a few days, I think it may have been during the holidays at some point, or like a bank holiday weekend. I literally just made flashcards like on everything we had done in all our lessons. Well, the entire, like all of science and like a few other subjects, and well, not for maths and English. But I made flashcards on a lot of subjects, and that really helped me remember a lot of the material, and it was really useful when it came to exams, because I didn't have to study as hard a few days before the exams. So in the end, I ended up with 7 A stars and 3 A's. But since I was the first year group to sit the new specification in English and maths, I got a 9 in maths, which I just say is an A star instead, and I got a 9 in English language, which I say is an A star, and an A in English. So as for a few lessons that I did learn during my time in secondary school, the first was that in my experience, British people have quite a pessimistic attitude. And this is why this is like one of the aspects of British culture which I dislike. Like for the case where I was saying like my teachers sort of discouraged me from saying like, oh, well, and my friend said like, oh, well, you won't get into Oxford or whatever. Like, this is a thing I dislike. The fact that immigrants and their children tend to be quite ambitious. And then like British culture doesn't really like overly ambitious people. So they kind of like fire them down, or well, they shoot them down, and they basically say like, oh yeah, you can't achieve this. And I think it's a little different to American culture, or well, American attitudes to ambitious people, because you have like the whole American dream. And if say like a kid in the US in like elementary school, they're like, oh hey miss, I want to become like the next president or whatever, they're generally it's like a you can do this attitude. Like if you like knuckle down, work hard, whatever, all this other stuff, like then you can probably become president. Whereas if you were in like primary school in the UK and you said to your teacher like, "Hey, I want to become like the next prime minister or something," they'd be like, "Yeah, kid," like as if. So I think generally like British people have more pessimistic attitudes, especially when it comes to like people sharing like their big vision or like their plans to achieve X, Y, or Z. Um, and that's something I kind of wish I could change. So that's one of the realizations I came to, which is that I don't have to worry too much if I'm sharing like my overly ambitious plans with like British people in general, because they generally have a bit more pessimistic, or well, I don't know if you want to call it realistic, but I personally call it pessimistic attitude. And I suppose that's also why you don't see too many like huge startups being founded here, and they're mainly happening in the US, just because people are way more ambitious and like entrepreneurial over there. And I don't know if you would once call them like delusional and thinking that they can like change the world or whatever. But yeah, in some cases it does work out for them. So now the second realization I also had was that school will never push you and you have to push yourself. And I wish someone told me this so much sooner, like probably at the start of secondary school, that the system in schooling is designed for like the average student, which means that let's say you're really good at art, right? Um, yeah, like you could, your teachers will probably praise you in your art lessons, being like, oh, "Wow, that's like really good" or whatever, but they will never push you to go further. Or well, in most schools, they won't push you to go further because they're concerned more with the average student and helping the average student to improve. Most systems in life, or well, most things in life, are designed for the average person, and the same goes for schooling. So, like in my case, I was particularly good at maths, and I just sort of sat there complacent in lesson for like 2 years, just not really doing anything. And I didn't realize I had to push myself, and my teachers had never pushed me. And yeah, there are some teachers who are like fantastic and do push like very able students, but that's like rarely the case. So a realization I came to after secondary school was that I wish I had pushed myself more and I didn't waste my time during my maths lessons, or that my teacher had kind of told me, or someone had told me this sooner, being like, you have to push yourself. If you're good at something, then push yourself to get better at it, rather than becoming complacent and being like, "Oh, I'm already really good at this. Like, I can just like sit down and chill." Yeah, I wish I'd just known that sooner. And also a realization I came to when like planning this video was that don't feel bad about like any negative life experiences that have happened to you. Because there were many times growing up where I was like, "Oh wow, my friends have been going on like so many holidays. They've been going on holidays every year, and like my family just didn't have the money to be able to spend on those luxuries or stuff like that, or the latest, I don't know, game or whatever." In other cases, like when we struggled financially for like a few weeks at a time or stuff like that, then I kind of envied my friends in that regard. Or any other experiences I've been through, which were all quite negative, or well, I wasn't too happy with at the time. I realized looking back, just me speaking about these experiences or writing about them online, it generally does help other people who may be in a similar situation to sort of overcome their situation as well. And I feel like almost every experience has some value, no matter how negative it may be, just because it can help someone else get through that experience if you're willing to share it online in the form of, let's say, a blog post or a newsletter, or like even me with this video. So now after my GCSE results, I realized I had a pretty decent shot of getting into Oxford or Cambridge, just because my results were really good for the school I went to. And like universities tend to compare your results in comparison to like the average results at your school. So if you go to a particularly bad school and you get excellent, well, pretty good results, which would have been average at, let's say, a grammar school or a private school, then you're going to look so much better in comparison because they kind of like contextualize your GCSE score. So anyway, I had that in mind and I realized like my GCSE results were pretty good at this point. So I went to a pretty average sixth form, but I was fortunate enough to have some really fantastic teachers, especially my Phyv Maths teacher, because he was like incredibly good at teaching. And I've heard that he even recommends my videos, my video on like how to get an A star in Phyv Maths every year to his like a new class of year 12 students or something like that. But anyway, I don't think I have many stories from sixth form. I do remember one specific case where it was about October time and I was helping out on the open day. And I was in the physics department helping out on the open day because I kind of enjoyed physics. And there was a year 13 pupil who I was speaking to because he was also helping out there. And I asked him like, oh, where he's applying and stuff like that. And he was like, oh, he's applying to Oxford. And then I said, oh yeah, I want to sort of apply to Oxford next year as well and stuff like that. And then he asked me what GCSE results I got. And then he was like, oh yeah, you're not going to get in with those GCSE results. There's no point applying. Like, why would you even bother? You'd just be wasting your time and stuff like that. So he was basically very pessimistic to me. And I think that was a huge blow to my confidence when it came to applying, or well, when it came to thinking about applying. But anyway, like a few months later, because Oxford and Cambridge give out their offers in like January-ish time, in January, I realized that he didn't even get an offer. And yeah, he was rejected. And despite him saying to me that he was like predicted for A stars, in his actual A-level results, I think he didn't achieve any A stars. He achieved like A, B, B, which is like, yeah, still pretty good. But for how he was making himself seem to be, oh, well, by discouraging other people who were quite ambitious. I mean, it made me feel better about myself being like, wow, these people really don't matter. And like the people who are dealing like blows to your confidence, it's more of a reflection of their own insecurities when it comes to applying, because he appeared to seem very confident when it came to applying to like Oxford or something. But I figured the reality was he was very insecure and very unconfident in applying. And then when he meets someone else who is also thinking about applying in the year below, it's so much easier for him to just sort of say like, oh, well, you have no chance, like sort of to make himself feel better by making other people feel worse, which is like a terrible thing to be doing just in general. But anyway, I was pretty pleased to learn that he like didn't get it, because I realized his opinions was like completely useless and like he was just trying to make himself feel better anyway. So yeah, during sixth form, I ended up using Anki pretty much consistently throughout year 12, and I did pretty well in the topics test during that time, just because I sort of had the information. But I didn't really improve too much of my problem solving skills. Like I sort of did the senior maths challenge and the AS physics challenge, and I did okay in both. But I didn't realize that I had to improve my problem solving skills until about the summer after year 12, because I attended a summer school at Eton College for state school pupils. And during that summer school, I met someone who did well in BMO1, BMO2, the British Mathematical Olympiad, and he almost qualified for the International Maths Olympiad team for the UK. And I realized, oh wow, people actually do take this Olympiad stuff pretty seriously, or that like this guy, he was insanely good at problem solving, but he still didn't make it on to a team, which means that there were people even better than him at problem solving. And I remember in one particular case, I was stuck in a problem for about like 10 minutes, and then he sort of looked over at the problem, and then like within like 5-10 seconds, he sort of figured it out and knew exactly like where, like found my mistake in like reams of working. And I was just like, wow, damn, is this like what people who have been problem solving, like actively improving their problem solving skills for years are like? And I had basically started, but anyway, after summer school, I was sort of inspired to improve my problem solving skills much more. So when it came to like preparing for admissions test, because at the time I was planning on applying for physics at Oxford, so I was going to be seeing the PAT. So I did a lot of PAT past papers, and I bought some like physics problem solving books, and I also did like a few British Olympiad past papers and stuff like that. And also Isaac physics questions, and that really helps me to improve my problem solving skills over the summer after year 12. And that's when I started taking it seriously. And that worked out pretty well in terms of like when it came to admission tests and interviews and stuff like that. But I still wondered to myself, like, had I started a year earlier, even 2 years earlier, how much better would I be now just at problem solving in general? Or would I have made it much further, like potentially made it onto the, I don't know, International Maths Olympiad team for the UK or whatever, or physics or stuff like that? I mean, for the physics Olympiad, I did end up doing well. But then I realized, like, people had literally, when I got to university, I realized that this is a culture. People had been preparing for this for months before, and I just sort of like casually did a few papers. And I wish I had known that people were sort of doing this so much sooner, because it would have been immensely useful. So anyway, I ended up attending 2 more summer schools that summer. I attended summer school at UCL and I attended summer school at Cambridge. And then I realized that I actually want to apply for Cambridge instead. So I switched my plans and sat the NSAA instead, which is the Natural Sciences Admission Assessment. And I ended up doing well enough at NSAA to get a interview, and then like ended up doing well in the interview to get an offer. And I actually did vlog my interview experience, but like the footage is sort of stored somewhere on my phone or computer. And I'm thinking of like piecing it together or like turning that into video at some points, and if it is, then it should be on my channel somewhere. But anyway, after interviews, I felt very tired, because I had been preparing for a few months, well, for like admission tests and then the interviews, and I did like mock interviews with some of my teachers at my school. And I also had an interview at like Manchester and Imperial before my Cambridge interview, which is why I applied to Manchester and Imperial, because I knew they did interviews before the Cambridge one, so I could sort of get like more interview practice in or something. Anyway, so I felt super tired for that month after, and I basically did no work during that month. And then I remember getting my offer in about mid-January, and there's like a video on my channel where it's me like reacting to getting an offer. I remember the first chemistry like topic test I did after that, I ended up getting a B or something. And I was like, oh, well, my offer is like 2 A stars and 2 A's. And I'm getting a B right now. Like, I felt pretty bad about myself. And then I remember my chemistry teacher pulling me off to the side after the lesson, being like, hey, you have this offer, like, what's going on, what's going wrong now, like, why aren't you like getting good results in chemistry, do you want to miss your offer or something? And he asked me like how I wanted to prioritize my subjects to achieve the 2 A stars and 2 A's for my offer. And I just sort of said to him like, I want to achieve 4 A stars. And then he sort of said something like, oh, in the last 20 years, I've never once met a student who achieved 4 A stars, well, in this school. Which was sort of meant to be an indication like, that's a bit unrealistic for you or something. But no, I was like very much determined. When I did end up achieving it, and after the results, I felt like kind of like smuggish or something, just because like I was told that I couldn't be able to do it. And then when you're told, sometimes when you're told you're not able to do something, it like motivates you to do even more, just to like show the other person or show whoever like they were wrong during that time. But yeah, that's basically what ended up happening. So yeah, I just like sort of revised, like, those were mainly the 2 key experiences or memories from 6th form. But as for some of the lessons I learnt during that time, I learnt that ignoring the haters especially, or well, I'm going to call it ignoring the haters. So like in year 12, the guy who told me that like I had no chance and that I should just not bother, I could have given up then and there and be like, oh yeah, this guy's actually right, I just might not bother. I mean, turned out he was lying. When I actually met him, I remember meeting him after, and I asked him if he got an offer from Oxford, and it turned out he said yes, but it turned out he was lying and he didn't actually get an offer. Because the people who did get offers from Oxford in my 6th one, they knew who else got an offer and it was just not him. Anyways, I learned that he was sort of projecting his own insecurities onto me, and in generally many of these cases, when you meet someone who's dealing a blow to your confidence or like telling you can't do something, it's more because they feel like they can't do the thing themselves. And what people are saying to you is just a reflection of their own insecurities instead. Some teachers feel particularly threatened by like overly ambitious students who want to like do really well. And I don't know if it comes down to the British culture or something, but they have a natural tendency to like sort of shoot them down or be like, oh, well, like, yeah, it's not really possible, or to sort of discourage them from doing something. And I don't know if it's them trying to be realistic, but I just generally don't like that attitude. Although I'm not sure if it works better by saying if they're using some kind of reverse psychology, but I think only for a few people that ends up working. It actually encourages them more to try and actually get the thing done. But for the vast majority of people, if you're trying to use reverse psychology or something to like kind of actually make them more ambitious or make them go for the thing by telling them that they're not able to achieve it, then that actually works against most people, I think. But then again, like it sort of depends on the individual and you don't really know. But I feel like generally it's better to encourage them and be like, oh, if you work hard, you'll and you work smart, then you should be able to get it. And the next lesson or realization that I ended up coming to was that improving your problem solving skills during secondary school or even sixth form, like especially if you're going for STEM related subjects, it's so immensely useful. Like, I can't explain how useful it can be. And just doing a little, like pushing yourself with an extra challenging problem every day over like a few weeks and months is going to make you so much better at problem solving. And I wish I had realized this sooner, that people take improving their problem solving skills pretty seriously, and they started off pretty young as well. Like, I started off like towards the end of year 12, and I think I got pretty good, but I still wonder, like, had I started like a year or two earlier, like how much better would I be? So this is sort of what I encourage my younger brother to do, who's in year 8, to like improve his problem solving skills, just because I know when he sort of gets to the age of like year 11 or year 12, then he would be like insanely good. The time I came to this realization was that I don't think I would have come to realization had I not gone to Eton College Summer School and met that guy who almost qualified for the International Maths Olympiad team for the UK. And this is one of the things, like, if you can go to like summer schools and math camps or these summer programs with like academic people, especially if you're good at a subject, like let's say you're good at maths and you go to a math camp during that summer, like you'll realize there that you're not actually that good at maths. It's like a big fish in a small pond, right? In your school, like you may be the best at maths in your school or best at whatever subject. And then you're like, oh, well, I don't really have to work much harder because like I'm the best around. Like, what else is there? How good can people even get? And I feel like if in secondary school I had gone to a math camp or something one summer, then that would have been immensely useful because I would have found like literally dozens of people so much better than me at maths. And it would be discouraging at first, but then it'd be inspiring being like, wow, like there is a huge world outside and I'm now a small fish in like a huge pond. But I can like work to get so much better at it. And like there is no reason to be content with just being the best in your school. Like I would have, had I realized sooner that there's this huge world outside, or well, like there are so many other people who like maths just as much or like physics just as much and are really good at it as well and like so much better than me, then that would have encouraged me to get better earlier on, and I would be on a similar level to how they are now. And I sort of wish I had realized that sooner, or well, went on these programs sooner, or met people who were really good at certain subjects sooner. And I think this is especially the problem with sort of able students at like average or below average secondary schools or sixth forms. Because if you go to like selective grammar schools, then you can always find someone better than you. Oh, well, you can mostly find someone better than you. But no, it's still valuable to go to math camps and like summer programs and stuff like that, just so you can meet people and like get a sense of like how far you can actually go with some of this. But that's a separate video from like a whole separate video on Olympiads and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically it. That's sort of like my path to coming to Cambridge and how I went about like improving my problem solving abilities, and like some of the people I met along the way who were very discouraging, but I didn't let them get to me, and everything surrounding that. So I don't know, hopefully you learnt some lessons or something, or like well done if you made it this far and had me ramble on for ages. But I'd say that now life is actually like much better, and I didn't imagine that it could become this much better, because now I basically don't have to worry about finances anymore, in the sense that I get a £10,500 bursary every year from St. John's College and the university together. I get a scholarship, and I also I maxed out my student loan maintenance loan, so I get 9,000 in that. So I get almost 20,000 a year, and I just basically don't have to worry about money for the time being. And it allows me to like focus on actually like making these videos, for example, as well. And basically doing the things that I end up enjoying, and it allows me to like spend a bit more on like camera equipment and like just I don't know, good stuff like that, and like buy a better laptop, which just makes like the process of like video editing and just doing stuff in general like so much better and streamlined and enjoyable. And like I'm in a better position now, and also like using using a degree from Cambridge, it would like set me up better later in the future as well, which is like exactly the thing like I sort of wanted growing up, in that I wanted to like make the most of the educational opportunities I had to be able to like go to the best university that I possibly could, and to like make the most of the experiences there, meet some interesting people, make some like lifelong connections. And because of all of that, I'd say like I'm pretty pleased with life at the moment. But yeah, that's basically it for the video. Hopefully you found a few of my life lessons useful, or you found me like going through some of my life story quite useful, and it sort of encourages you or inspires you to work a little bit harder, or make the most of the opportunities you have, and try and make more opportunities for yourself, especially like if you're in a developed country, because like you have so many more opportunities than other people, like millions, tens of millions of other people all around the world who are your age. But yeah, that's basically for the video. I guess I'll see you next time. Bye.